Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Rise Report. Hey, today I've got a good friend and special guest, Jim Griffin from the Griffin home team down in Johnson City, Tennessee. Jim, how's it going, my friend?
What's up, man? Doing fantastic. How about yourself?
Awesome. Can't complain. It's great to see you. And
Yes, sir.
yeah, it's great to see you. For those of you who don't know, Jim and I are both coaches for Coach Pipes. That's kind of how we know each other. Also, coincidentally, are both team leaders with LPT Realty. Jim's on track. His team's on track to close 100 million this year, about 350 units. Has been with LPT for about 2 years. I want to dive into a little bit about with your journey, Jim. And why don't you just take a second to just say a couple things and kind of where you're at in your life and in your career and how long you've been doing this.
Cool. How much time you got? So, of course, my name's Jim G. Oh, Jim Griffin. Everybody calls me Jim G. Here locally, everybody knows me as Jim G Guarantee. It's our little, play on words there. But I mean, I got licensed in 2007, but I just pretty much did BPOs and some, property pres stuff during that time. So our market was really dead. And then 2011 was when I actually started real estate full time, actually taking it serious,
Yeah.
And that was basically because my son, we found out the day before I turned 30 that I was expecting a kid. And I was like, oh crap, now what? So it was a horrible birthday party that day because I was really torn up and crying. I was like, oh God, my life is over. But I have to sell my motorcycle. But being the person that I am, I'm one of those guys that, if I'm backed into a corner, I'm gonna come out fighting. I'm always gonna find a solution. I'm always gonna find an angle to go and a strategy to be able to come out winning. But my first year in real estate, being 2011, sold 60 homes. And you would think, oh my God, 60 homes, that's crazy. Well, yeah, my average sales price was like $45,000.
Right.
So it was a lot of hard work. But during that
2011, what were you
process,
selling? Foreclosures, short sales, or?
mostly all foreclosures. And I mean, it just like we were sitting on 16, 18 months worth of inventory in our area.
Wow. Yeah.
It was tough. And it really was the grind. But during that period, before that, I had a history in retail management, so on and so forth. And I had a guy that was a mentor of mine, and I linked up with him. I lived with him and his family for 6 days a week and learned real estate before everything started to crash. And then everything crashed and kind of got crazy. But from 2011 on, from what I had learned from him, one of the things that I had learned is he's like, you've got to read this book. It's called The Millionaire Real Estate Agent by Gary Keller. And, he was down in Chattanooga, which is about 3.5 hours away from me. I'm like, okay, so I read the book and I'm like, okay, this makes sense. This is simple enough. It's kind of like, a business project. And I was with a local firm here. It was a realty executives firm for that, 2011 time period. And KW came to town. So I moved to KW because I knew I was like, I want to build a team because my whole vision was building a business with other people. I didn't want to own a job. I want to own a team and build a bigger world with other people. And so fast forward to end of 2011, my son was born on a Tuesday. That Thursday, I changed firms and basically lost all my relationships that I had as far as, any REO contacts, things along those lines that I was working on because everything was owned by the brokerage and had to start all over again. 2012, got to 117 sales and decided, I'm going to stroke out and die. I need some help, and started learning about building a team. And that was one of the things during that period that while I was with KW is that, I took time and invested in growing myself, not just as a leader, but as a business owner and learning what worked, what didn't work. And I sought out the people that were succeeding at a high level. Kind of like, we've talked before, getting in the right rooms, right? Getting around people that are succeeding, at a higher level than you are and forging relationships with them. And that's what I did. And that then opened up doors, so on and so forth. And
It's
we
funny you
built.
say that. Not to cut you off there, Jim, but it's funny you say that because I've been putting a lot of thought towards that lately, and like the amount of people on my team, the amount of people like people that you and I know, with some of the rooms that we've been in that are just so impactful. I had asked you before we started recording. Why aren't you out in Montana, out at Big Sky, where the big LPT mastermind is, and we have a very similar reason why we can't be out there with our children. But to be in that room, the opportunities, especially the opportunities that LPT provides, right? How important it is. But there's so many agents out there that kind of just disregard that. Maybe they'll follow some people on social or whatnot. But when you connect with people And that's something that I've really gone out and really have been determined to do. I've got friends in this business all over the country that I know I can pick up and call if I've
Yep.
got something I need to bounce off of, or man, how are you doing this, or how'd you tweak that, or I noticed you guys doing this, and look at just some of the people that we know. Like look at Michael Barrett out in Denver. Him and I talk all the time, and look what he's done with his team over the last couple months, but over the last 2 years probably. But and I know you guys are doing the same thing down there in Tennessee. You mentioned about starting a team, right? I know Gary's book talks a lot about that, and a lot of people want to start a team. I think they want to start a team maybe even for the wrong reasons. As you know as well as I know, there's good teams out there and there's bad teams out there,
Oh yeah,
right?
all day
And
long.
I think the number one reason that people, and I've said this on this podcast before, but I think the number one reason people want to start a team to initially is ego, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's ego, and also the ego and pride of they don't really want to work, and and they think that they can come out of production and just make money off of everybody else, and they don't have to grow as a leader. They have to grow as a business owner. They don't have to pour into others and help others, other people reach what their goals and dreams are. They just think I'm just going to sit back and just collect checks. And
Yeah.
plus, the phrase team, group, like you and I could sell help. Me and a stranger could decide to sell real estate, and I could call it the Jim and Strangers group, and the consumer doesn't know the difference. And just like most real estate agents don't even know the difference either of what a true team or a true group is, and the benefits that can bring and the opportunities for everybody. And it doesn't have to be that's the typical MREA structure, because the model has evolved significantly. But it's about, because I'm a relationship person, even though I don't necessarily really like, people to a point, but I'm a relationship person. And I know if I'm, like you said, you've built relationships with people across the country that if you need something, you want to run an idea by them, that they can be your sounding board. And, it's people that are playing on the same field, and then people that are playing on a bigger field than us that we can reach out to. And that all comes out just from being proactive to make those relationships, to getting into, going to the masterminds, going to the conferences, going to the trainings, whatever you can to surround yourself with that are with highly successful people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think when you're around, when you surround yourself with those people, we've all heard the quote, but when you do surround yourself with those people, I think it provides clarity also, right? It's provided me with a ton of clarity, right? Because when I first, like I haven't been, I sell some homes, but I'm not in full-time production. And, when I had to make that decision, I just knew that my passion was working with real estate agents. That's what my passion is, helping agents build their business. That's the thing that keeps me up at night, right? I learned back in 2012, 2013 that my passion for the actual sales aspect of this business was dying. And when people, and by putting myself in some of those rooms and gaining a lot of that knowledge and getting that clarity around what I really needed to do, because I didn't know back then, right? I just knew I just wanted to help people. And if you know me well enough, you'll see that. I just know I wanted to help people. And but by getting in some of those rooms and creating some of those relationships, man, it really provided a lot of clarity. But
And we allow ourselves, because I don't know if it's necessarily the independent contractor mindset, because I don't look at it like we're independent contractors. Like, we're all business owners, but we, like, in our market, I was the first team. I was the only team for the longest time. So we were the pioneers in our market, and we knew that it worked because it worked all across the country. It worked in a couple hours down the road in Knoxville or Chattanooga and Nashville. And people are like, oh, that's not going to work around here. So we allow ourselves at time, whether by choice personally or by choice geographically, to set ourselves on an island.
yeah,
And that's why having these outside relationships and and stuff it's a game changer.
well,
It
it's
always
funny you
forces you
say
to think
that.
bigger.
It's funny you say that, and kind of shifting the conversation a little bit here. It's like LPT Realty, right? You started with KW, you went to EXP. Tell me a little bit about that, and I'll come back to LPT.
So I mean, first and foremost, like, I loved my time at KW. I loved my time at EXP. The only reason I left KW is because the local leadership and we didn't see eye to eye, even though because I was running the MRA model they taught, and we just didn't see eye to eye. It wasn't the place of growth for me. And John Maxwell says it's the law of the lid, that if their lid here for my leadership is hitting this, then guess where everybody else is that's in my world?
Mm-hmm.
They're below that. And my job as the leader is to build a bigger world so we can all grow. And I had reached that spot where there was just no more growth for me here locally with them. And we made through the EXP. And the true relationships that I had at KW, I still have today. There's several, major players that are at KW that I still talk to once a month or so, and some of the executive team even. But then with EXP, we had the same type of thing. It was all about relationships. When people we'd show up to masterminds, we'd show up to some of the, the penthouse parties, if you will, when you go to
Mm-hmm.
the masterminds, and people are like, how are you? This is the closed group for this person's downline. How did you end up here? And I'm like, I don't know. They asked us to come hang out. And the running joke was kind of like, whose group are you in? Because we got along with everybody and had those really strong, not necessarily intimate relationships with all of them, but that strong, real, deep relationship to where I could call them if I needed anything. And we weren't really even planning on leaving EXP. What we were doing is we met with several of the large brokerages about, franchises, so on and so forth. And we met with pretty much every other virtual brokerage that was out there because I was secret shopping to see what they offered. So when somebody was looking to join us, I knew what the opportunities were for them where they were looking.
Yeah, yeah.
And we ended up chatting with Miss Tracy, who is RP's, right hand in New York, and that conversation kind of ended up to, well, if you guys are ever down in Florida, let us know. We'd love to have you come by. And of course, I'd go down. And I told him, I was like, I'm not really in the mood to look at anything. It's like, and I told them exactly what we were doing. We're just shopping, but I'll take time to get to know you. And we ended up going down there, and honestly, RP spent more time with me than any person in the entire industry that I've ever spent time with, even coaches that I've spent time with, to get to know about, what mine and Leanne's goals were, about our kids, and so on and so forth. And the full story is I'm sitting there and, at the, table at his house, and I start tearing up, and I'm like, I don't understand. We're really, in the scheme of things, we're not that big of a deal. There's people that are bigger producers than us. I don't know how I ended up here. And I looked at Michael Valdez. I was like, I don't get this, dude. I don't get it. I was like, but we're in. I didn't know the comp structure. I didn't know anything besides that. It's kind of, it's similar with the other virtual brokerages. And I was like, I'm in. And RP looked at me, he's like, what do you mean you're in? I'm like, I'm in. We didn't really even ask you for a close. I was like, no. I was like, you guys, they honored that, which I
Yeah.
honestly didn't expect. And
Yeah.
because it goes back to the whole thing, I'm a relationship person, and I'm a believer in people. And I was blown away, and I'm like, okay, so if I want to go and grow my business and be around other, big hitters, but also big thinkers to help challenge me to think outside of my comfort zone, this is the place to be. And
Yeah.
we came home that Sunday, flew back home, and on Tuesday we told the team, like, guess what? We're leaving EXP. We're going to LPT. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, we're doing it. They're like, okay, we have no clue. What's the comp? I have no clue. I just know this is where we're supposed to go. And just we
I
we
think
went with
that
our
just
gut.
says such a just says so much about RP and his leadership, and I had a similar experience with him. I shopped around a little bit, and I knew wasn't quite sure where I was going. I knew where I wasn't going, and that was backwards. I shopped around a little bit, and RP was the first. Well, number one, here you had the founder of the company taking time out to jump on. It was on a Zoom call, taking time to jump on a Zoom call with me and spend an hour. And not once did I feel like I was in a time crunch to ask the questions that I needed to ask or whatever. And the biggest deciding factor for me was he never once asked me to join. Nobody ever asked me to join. And I had other companies wine and dine me, fly me out to meet, fly me down here, fly me over here, and I didn't get that at all.
Yep.
I got some straight shooting, and I felt like it was more about the relationship than anything. And I could tell, well, I heard him speak, out at Sales Power, out at Coach Pipe's Sales Power. I think Vegas might have been the first time. He was out in
Yeah.
Vegas,
Yep.
and I was like, and at the time, I knew I wasn't renewing my Remax franchise, and I just didn't know what that looked like yet. And I was like, I heard him speak, and I was like, that's the guy. That's the guy I'm going to align myself with. So just goes to show you how important the right leadership is. I think in this business. So that's a great story, man.
Yeah, there's a lot more details that I'll bore you with one day, but
Yeah.
it was our world has become, and our society, if you will, has become, we're so digitized. It's all the highlight reels, right? It's everybody's fake. They put on this fake face. They might be struggling with something, and they're not authentic. They'll change the way they talk on social media. They change the way they present themselves on social media or to the public, and they're living basically two lives. And I've always said, whether it was when I was in ministry for 17 years leading worship, or when with my team or whatever, it's like the thing that people crave, that the world craves, is authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can be genuine to who you are and to your belief structure, to who you are, and you're the same today as you are tomorrow and the next day, no matter what environment that you're in, you're still the real same freaking damn person, then people will fall over themselves to try to follow it, because it's something that's missing so much in our society. And that was really, one of the things that I was blown away with RP. And like, honestly, I had Valdez and I were buddies we were really good friends for the entire time that I was EXP, because the first time we met each other, like, what's up? We're like, we're like brothers. And then RP and I, we're kind of like twins. We kind of favor each other. I always joke with them about that. But, it was the authenticity and the rawness and the realness of the leadership. And like you said, that trickles down to the whole thing. Because, now as we're growing, being, LPT has gotten to, a lot larger agents than it was when I joined. Not everybody's going to get that Zoom call or the time to sit down and break bread. And that's okay. But when they know that that's the person that's leading, that's the visionary and the founder of the company that's looking out for us, and that he's a real guy and he really wants the best interest for everybody, and I really believe that's his heart's intent, then it goes from the top all the way to the bottom. And let's
Mm-hmm.
all link arms and do something big.
Yeah, I think even though, like you said, as the company grows, everybody may not have that same opportunity initially, but I think, I think the opportunity's still there. I think there's enough opportunity provided to get close to that leadership at that level, that it's still there. I mean, heck, with I'm not sure if you jump on the Tuesday afternoon calls, the Growth Plus calls,
Yep.
but for him to take that time out of his schedule every Tuesday afternoon, or even Monday afternoon for all the agents or Monday morning for all the agents company wide, I mean, I think that says something in itself. But yeah, man, it's been a ride, and we're excited about the future. And what's real estate market down in Johnson City looking like?
So we're sitting about 4.5, 5 months worth of inventory, but I mean, we were late to the party.
Yeah.
We never really had any appreciation until 2021. Right as soon as that geographical restrictions of the workforce had happened and people started relocating, and everybody's like, I love Tennessee. It's like, I love Nashville. And like, no, number one, that's fake Tennessee. And number two, they've been having appreciation, massive appreciation for over a decade. And then the next two largest closest cities are Chattanooga and Knoxville, same thing. And then people found us. And I always say, where Tennessee does this, we're that tip. We actually, like, Bristol Motor Speedway is 20 minutes from my house.
Been there many times.
The Tennessee Vols down in Knoxville is an hour and a half from my house. So like I was driving, like, we're between Tennessee Vols, the Smoky Mountains and Pigeon Forge, and Bristol Motor Speedway. So it's NASCAR and racing, it's SEC football, Jesus and moonshine. And Morgan Wallen, because he's from our neck of the woods too. So,
man, I got some stories about Bristol Motor Speedway that I can't even remember half of them, but
it's great people watching.
Stories. I got some stories, some memories, man, some memories. Yeah. So, obviously our industry's going through some significant shift. I think, and everything's a little bit different, but I think as a whole, I think it's real, especially with some of the latest acquisitions and mergers that we've seen. Our industry, it's starting to open people's eyes, to, okay, I better pay attention to this, and because agents I just don't feel like they pay as close of attention to the industry as they really should, just to know, hey, look, this is our business, right? What is this going to look like 5 or 10 years from now? That which is the big question I had to ask when I made the transition I made last year. The number one question I asked myself, we've seen some really big acquisitions. Real acquires Remax, biggest brand in the world, gets acquired by a 30,000 agent cloud brokerage, right?
Yep.
What say you on that, man? Like, what? I've got my opinions from a broker shoes, being a broker owner for 20 years. My opinions on that, like, I count my blessings every day. I was able to make my own decisions when I did, and was able to create my own destiny through that. I feel really bad for the current broker owners right now. The conversations I'm having kind of behind the scenes with some Remax broker owners, it's like, I've got to be putting out there how great this is, but how bad I know it sucks for me. You know, the real agents are now, or Real is now a direct competitor for a Remax broker owner. And
Yep.
how long is it going to take the average Remax agent? Now, you've got a lot of Remax agents that bleed the balloon, that bleed the red, white, and blue, and they'll never leave that brand. But how long is it? In this deal, I just read an Inman the other day. The boards are voting on it 2 days before the big broker owner convention, Remax's big broker owner convention. So they're going to have this deal done which is what, I figured they'd want to walk on stage and say, hey, this deal's done. But where was I going with that?
What the impact is the broker owners?
Yeah. So anyway, I think the biggest impact for the broker owners is, number one, agents are free agents. These broker owners, I had a 5-year franchise agreement, right? What's that going to look like at the end of the day? How long is it going to take that's what I was saying. How long is it going to take the average Remax agent to catch on and say, what am I paying these fees for?
Yep.
Why am I paying a 25,000? My cap was 22.5 when I had a Remax. What's the cap at Real? 12? How
I
long
don't
is
even
that
know.
going to? Yeah. Like I don't even know, man. It's going to be interesting for sure. I think it's a major culture clash. But hey, what are your thoughts? Anything?
I mean, it sure as hell was, the hot topic that everybody was talking about on social media when it first was announced. And the way that I kind of equated, I was like, if it works for them, God bless them. There's got to be there's enough agents to go around for all of us to be successful. Just like there's enough real estate business to go around in all of our markets for all of us to be successful. I just want my unfair share.
Yeah.
Like I want LPT to have our unfair share, and that's perfectly fine. But the way that I looked at it, the way I explained it to people is like, okay, if you're a vegetarian and I'm not a vegetarian, and we decide to combine how we eat and how we live, there's gonna be some clashes. There's gonna be some things I have to learn. It's like if you have a kosher kitchen and then you have a pork barbecue pit, and they decide to go into business together, it's two completely different models, two completely different sets of beliefs that could possibly work some way, somehow, maybe. And that's the thing that they're at, because you've got the traditional brokerage that's set up for the traditional agent, and then you've got the cloud brokerage, which is that's the way the industry is going, and the way it's been going for a pretty good while. And they're trying to mesh those two worlds. If they can pull it off, applause to
Yeah.
them. But it's going to be an uphill battle, regardless. And
It'll
then,
be an
like you
uphill
said,
battle. When I ask people, hey, when I ask Remax people, hey, why do you think Real would be interested in Remax? And everybody says, well, for the brand, for the brand. It's like, well, my research shows that the CFOs from investment banking, and what's an investment banker look at when he's looking to make a purchase? He's not looking at the brand, right?
nope.
And for a company that's, let's just call it what it is. I mean, bleeding agents and profits. If it continues to do that, that brand's the last thing on his mind. I can assure you.
Well,
You
and
know,
in our industry, does the brand that we're associated with necessarily bring us any? For those of us that are true producers, the brand does not bring you any business. It
yeah,
you know that's your home. That's what you're comfortable with. It's like your warm blanket. You want to snuggle up to at night.
yeah,
It doesn't do anything necessarily to to grow your business, but it might make you feel like it does, but it doesn't really at the root out of it for the majority of them all. And so, like you said, for an investment banker, for somebody on Wall Street looking at it, it's about transactions, it's about commissions, income, net profits. And if you want to increase your net profits, you increase your agent count, but they're going to have to adapt to a whole new model. Because like you said, the model they have hasn't been profitable and hasn't been really working so super hot. But,
Yeah, and a lot of those profits include ancillary services from real side of things, and I know a lot of Remax broker owners that have their own ancillary services. So I mean, there'll be a bit of a clash there too, but not just so much, specifically that acquisition. We've seen other acquisitions with EXP and Next Home and some others. Those are the biggies. But what do you think? Like this consolidation, right? What's your take on the reasoning?
so, my thoughts have been, and it kind of started way back in the KW days, that really what we're going to see is it's the evolution of the agent and the evolution of teams. And what was the traditional mega team now is where it's different than it was 10 years ago. And the opportunities are completely different. And the same thing has changed for brands as well. And it's like, okay, as mega teams become more and more of a powerhouse, they command more and more market share, do more and more transactions. And if you have a franchise that has, 100 agents, and then 10 of those agents are doing 20% of your volume and your GCI, they've got to adapt somehow. And I don't know really what it is, but when it comes to what their driving reason is, but it does seem to be like harvest season, the reckoning season, where this is getting groups like getting absorbed by this one, and this one's merging with this one. Really, what I've done is I've said, I don't really care what goes on. I'm
Mm.
doing this. Keep my head down, put my
Got your
blinders on,
blinders on.
and focusing on what I can do to impact my business and the people that are in my world, and let's go grow and do something big and kick butt. And because of that, we haven't allowed, the interest rates to be the excuses. It's like I wrote down a quote earlier today that Pipes had said. He said, interest rates don't dictate my success or my income. And it's the same thing. I'm not going to let all these distractions, all this noise going around, because there's enough in it. We have enough distraction and noise anyways. Hell, nobody can get on TikTok for 30 seconds. We're on there for 25 minutes because the psychology of it, we're sitting there just, you're trapped and death scrolling. I don't want any of that stuff to get in my way of what I'm doing. I'm trying to build a big world for the people in my world and for my family and make an impact in my community. So I don't care if everybody gets absorbed. Let them. For me and my house, we're going to keep on trucking. We're in alignment with where we need to be. And that's the thing, that as these acquisitions and mergers are happening, just like how when COVID happened, it disrupted the traditional work patterns and behaviors of the American workforce, because the geographical restrictions of having to live in the city that you worked in were removed.
Hmm.
And now how the majority of people can work remote. You can work for a company in New York and live in Tennessee. You live out in Colorado and work for a company in Florida. It's all changed. And I think that what we're going to see in the real estate industry is now with these acquisitions and mergers, and specifically like even with, you've got traditional and then you've got cloud brokerages, and where they're trying to mesh those two worlds, it's disrupting that traditional brokerage model that people have been so diehard on and that have been so accustomed to that they haven't ever looked anywhere else. They haven't ever went out to put their foot in the water to see what else was out there, what other opportunities were there. And now they're kind of just being thrown in. And because of
Hmm.
that disruption, I believe that, some of them are going to open up their eyes and see, oh, wait, there's a whole other world out here. It's kind of like having a black and white TV your entire life and walking into Best Buy. Like, what the hell? Everybody's got color. This is amazing. You know? And it's kind of like that's kind of what I expect. But like I said, as for us, man, we're just going to keep on trucking.
That's what you do. That's what you do. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, and I think it is forcing people to open up their eyes and to at least just pay attention with what's going on. But hey, Jim, we're about out of time, man, and I appreciate you taking the time. I always appreciate your insight, and I respect the hell out of what you're doing down there.
Appreciate that,
Next
man.
year, next year, all of our G3 coaches have got to get to Montana. I'm really, really. I got a feeling. I got a feeling they're having a pretty good time out there right now. So
Yeah, I've got a lot. I don't have a little bit of FOMO. I'm I'm heartbroken.
yeah,
Next time.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you, man. I mean, Bear was giving me dirt, man, and I was like, man, I just couldn't pull it off this year. But next year we gotta make it happen. So I think Heather and Lonnie Bush are out there. I
Yep.
think Michael's out there, and wish we could be with them, but we'll make it happen next year.
That's it.
All right, Jim.
Man, I appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy.
Yes, sir.